Okay, write-in question. um, Here's what this person said. I have a short temper, and I often wind up alienating myself from others because I'm quite quick to get angry. Okay, let's just stop right there. God bless you. Why? Because it took responsibility for something. How many angry people do you hear walking around saying, I got a problem with anger? That's not what they typically do. They're angry at somebody else for who they think got the problem. So we're going to throw some confetti on you. That's awesome. And you're one step closer because what we can own, we can soon stop moaning about it because we're going to change it. If we own it, you get control of it just by owning it. Did you know that when you name an emotion neurologically, when you just put a word to it, I'm feeling angry and name it, did you know that that starts to hook into all sorts of regulatory systems in your brain? Language has a whole different department. You know, you go to a store and you go to different departments. Well, you put language, that's different than the emotion. And the language now is attached to regulatory systems and, higher level areas of your prefrontal cortex. And now you've got inhibition and you got goal orientation and you got your values and all that stuff's coming to the party to help you with your anger. So good job for saying, I'm angry right now. And that's a problem. Okay, that's a start. It's probably affecting my blood pressure, further ownership, and it probably is. And that's a big problem. Your veins weren't designed to live in a tornado all the time. And when all that, cortisol and everything, inflammation and all that stuff happens, that's not good. And plaque decides to live in there, and weakness and hardening and inflammation, it's a lot of stuff. And my overall mental health. Yes, your mental health can be affected by anger, partially because of the chemicals that you get amygdala hijacking and adrenaline and all this kind of stuff that interferes with higher levels of thinking. And it turns into kind of a fear cycle. And then you got obsessional ruminating and all of this. And obviously, the quality of my relationships, too. True. No one really enjoys being yelled at or angrily criticized. So, even when I try to suppress my anger, which means push it down, I want to give you a different word. Let's stop suppressing it and let's observe it and embrace it and just say, I am feeling really angry. I'm not suppressing it because remember, Newtonian physics that Freud discovered, you push down and it pops out. So we're not going to suppress, we're going to feel, own it, sit with it. That's what mindfulness exercises have come along and taught people in the last however many years. Big deal. It's a big deal to be able to just name it, sit with it, not fight with it, just sit with it. Even when I suppress it, I find myself acting in a passive aggressive way. That's what I just said. You push it down here, it's going to squirt out over there. The tree has not changed. The leaves will change what they look like. How can I learn to control my anger before it controls me? All right. Great question. Let me start with something that may change everything. Anger is basically a signal. Okay, it's a signal emotion. Anger is a signal that you're wired with. Think of the red light on your dashboard or a pilot's dashboard in an airplane. When something is wrong, a red light starts flashing. That's anger. Anger tells me something is wrong. Okay? Wrath, the wrath of God is at injustice. God doesn't get mad unless somebody's doing something bad to somebody, right? So something's wrong, and that's creating a signal something's wrong. Now, that wrong could be I'm in danger. So we have fight or flight expressions of anger, fight. Flight means I'm going to use my anger to run the other way. But anger signals something is wrong. I could be in danger. I could be violated. Something's wrong. But here's the problem. It may be me. See, just because we're angry at something it doesn't mean something's wrong, but it doesn't mean that what's wrong is in reality outside something is wrong. It could be that what's wrong lives inside of me. All right. And let me give you a list of things that you could go check on. Am I angry because inside I feel all alone and isolated? And when we're alone and isolated, we feel helpless. And that's frustrating. And if you ever leave a baby alone, guess what's going to happen? They're going to scream in anger. All right. So I've got to ask myself, you know, one of the biggest ways to calm somebody down is to get them connected, get them attached, get them bonded, get them, in the Bible's words, rooted and grounded in a moment where somebody cares for them. Have you ever seen somebody get upset and they get angry and a friend comes up and touches them and grabs and says, okay, it's okay, calm down, calm down, calm down. And they de-escalate them through a process called being with. And so ask yourselves these things that are frustrating you, how many, I'm going to call it transformational moments do you have when you're angry where you actually talk to somebody and start to talk that out instead of being isolated emotionally? Somebody could be around you and you still be isolated. Number one. Number two, sometimes we get angry because problems on the inside because we have a wish to control somebody. So we want somebody to do something and they won't do it and we get angry. One of my favorite verses in Proverbs, it says, an angry person is like a city without walls, no boundaries. Sometimes we have the wish to go into somebody else's yard like there's no walls that define my property and theirs. And controlling people get very angry because of the wish to control. And on the other side, like you said, other people don't like that. So maybe the source of anger is a wish to be in control of other people and not surrendering to the fact that you really can't control anybody but yourself. Thirdly, the problem may be inside of me that I have a demand to be perfect or seen as perfect. Have you ever been in a relationship with a narcissist? And then you point out something that's wrong, or you point out a flaw, or you confront them in some way, and you might get screaming, rageful retaliation coming back at you. Well, why do they have that rage? Simply because they're not comfortable with being imperfect. I mean, if we're comfortable in our own skin and I know I have flaws and you point one out and you say, oh, gosh, yeah, I really do. Help me with that one. And we don't have a conflict with, there's nothing to fight, right? Nothing wrong other than I've already accepted what's wrong. So I'm not going to have a signal of a new problem. And some other things like, like wanting entitled respect and other things. In other words, let's check our anger first to see if the anger's telling me something's wrong, but what may be wrong is there's something I've got to change. I need to get connected. I need to let go. Or sometimes other people might be controlling me and I need to set some limits and say no. And then there's nothing to be angry about anymore. How can I be frustrated with somebody trying to control me? Once I've said no, they're not a controlling person anymore. Now they're a frustrated person, but I'm fine. Right? The city has walls now. So then let's flip that. And what's maybe wrong, what may be is the same issues on the other side. Maybe you have a desire to connect with somebody and they're shutting you out. That can bug us. And then we need to do something about that. Or maybe somebody's trying to control you and boundaries are needed. Or maybe somebody's putting perfectionistic, judgmental bunch of stuff on your head. And that might make you angry. But again, let's isolate the issues that are what are commonly called, we used to call in the old days, you push a button. That's pushing my buttons. Well, now we say triggered. Trigger gets overused a little bit, I think, because PTSD triggers that incapacitate people and start flashbacks and all that is a little more serious. But you can call it whatever you call it. It's kind of somebody hits a tender spot inside. So let's be aware of our tender spots. Now, some of you are getting violated and you really are getting victimized. You're getting abandoned, you're getting controlled, you're getting perfectionized, you're getting dominated, all that kind of stuff. And you might be depressed or you might be in pain or disillusioned or hopeless. And really underneath that, what I would say is you got to get in touch with your anger. Not your anger so you can go scream at somebody, but your anger that tells you quickly when that's occurring that this is a problem. And that would be a signal again. So sometimes we need to get in touch with it. And the last thing I would say about it is I've said embrace it and I've said put words to it. And I remember when our girls were little and the tantrums and the toddlerhood, I'd sit them down and say, Olivia, Lucy, okay, you're going to scream. You got to sit in time out until you can use your words. And when you can use your words, I'll come back in here as long as you scream. I'm not going to be listening. I only listen to words. I don't listen to screaming. And pretty soon they start to go, okay, I'll talk about it. And then that develops into a lot of regulation. So sometimes, we need to think about how to need to regulate. One of my favorite verses in Ephesians, it says, be angry, but in your anger, don't sin. So as I said, be angry, observe it, name it, but then in it, let's take ownership of it and find the sources and work through the sources. But certainly in it, let's not hurt somebody or ourselves.